Well, sure has been a while since I made a video like this. Might as well bring this back with something special. So, the Return to Freddy's.
Now you can play the game as normal. Oh, except if you die, you
Oh,
have to
but
do it
always
all over again.
remember, they died in 9/11?
If you've been around in the FNaF scene since the early years, I can almost guarantee you've at least heard about the series made by Tyler Alstrom. Heck, even in recent years, even if you haven't seen the original series, you've probably seen at least one of the many remakes of these games. It's been a series that's had an insanely odd yet intriguing history, starting off with a certainly rocky first game and evolving. It's a mess of a fan series, but you know, I honestly can't help but enjoy it one way or the other. The history of the series is pretty expansive, and there's a lot of pretty neat stuff on YouTube and whatnot that goes into a lot more detail about things than really I ever could. Because, you know, while it would be cool to look at a lot of what the series could have been, a lot of the plans TRTF had throughout his eventual run, I just kind of want to look at the original games because, I don't know, I thought it'd be funny. But that being said, if this video does well enough, and if people really want me to, I don't know, I'd be down to look at the planned TRTF games that were never released. It'd be pretty funny to talk about what TRTF Frank Burst was supposed to be because, or you know, I could just look at some of the remakes of the games. It could be fun, I don't know. Honestly, I just wanted to look back on these games because TRTF's been a series I used to be pretty invested in for years. Pretty much since I started discovering FNaF fan games back in middle school. Oh my god. And you know, despite the questionable quality of these games, something about the characters, minigames, lore, whatever, it kept me coming back. Even if a lot of it didn't make much sense, but you know, it's fine. And yeah, I just thought it would be cool to go back and actually play through these games properly, and you know, while I'm at it, make another review. It's been a while, so I am going to get this out of the way now, though. I'm going to be primarily focusing on the gameplay and presentation over any of the lore, especially since a lot of the lore in-game is pretty vague. Besides, that's what the book is for, so, you know, I am gonna read that book at some point. Don't doubt me. It's gonna happen eventually. Yeah, we should just get into this. I'm getting sidetracked. Yes, the original Return to Freddy's, or FNaF 3 fan-made. It's quite the fan game of all time, huh? I'm sure if you're familiar with this series, you're probably aware of the issues, controversies, whatever. You know, mainly with the amount of ripped assets from other people without credit, you know, most infamously being Tyler ripping off Candy the Cat from Emil Mako to make his own character, Sugar the Cat. You know, before Finance and Candies was even a thing. And there's also the whole issue of, like, you know, Scott Cawthon directly contacting Tyler to change the name of the game from FNaF 3 Fan-Made to The Return to Freddy's, because children mistook the fan game for the official third game, because this was before the third game released. It's fun times, you know? But come on now. This information's been out there for a while. I'd rather just focus on the game itself. I mean, after all, with how many people ended up playing the game, you know, including YouTubers like The Game Salmon and Corey X Kenshin of all people, surely there's something about this game that truly makes it special. Yeah, no, this game isn't good. It's basically just a FNaF 2 ripoff, except it takes place in the FNaF 1 location. Except it's so much more bare bones and boring. Ooh! Honestly, it's really the only way I can describe this game, is boring. All you do in this game is just sit in your office and occasionally put on the mask when an animatronic enters your office. The doors, they're useless. Everyone just kind of waltzes on in with no issue somehow. The cameras, using them actually makes the game harder. Switching cameras makes the animatronics go faster. I wish I was joking. Look at this. So wait, what if I were to just... That's really funny that the cameras can do that. What? Speaking of the animatronics, everyone is entirely scripted. They go to your office the exact same way. No one ever goes off track like how animatronics in the official games can. They always arrive in a very specific order, and they are all dealt with using the mask, including the puppet, for some reason. As such, there's absolutely no RNG when it comes to pathfinding or whatever, which in this case, it makes the game incredibly predictable, completely destroying any sense of suspense that might have at least been there originally. And, you know, because everyone's so predictable, there's basically no challenge. Literally, the only issue there is you can put on the mask too quickly. The game itself even mentions this fact, because the way this game is programmed is amazing.
Even if they went into your office, don't put the mask on instantly when you first show up or to at work. Just do one at a time. They should think you're they should think you're one of them and ignore you. For now.
Needless to say, I mean, outside of a couple Easter egg characters that are certainly something, there's basically nothing to say about this game from a gameplay perspective. It's just so dull. It's at a point where I was just browsing TikTok while waiting for something to happen, since the first couple of nights take freaking forever for anything to get going. Oh yeah, hit the sea line. Oh frick, wait. Oh yeah, and I somehow managed to do this on night 1. This is very riveting. What did I do? What did I do? What did I do? Okay. Yep, I could just do that. I don't know, I didn't really know where else to put this. I genuinely wonder if this ever happened to anyone else playing this game. Because, like, I don't think I've ever seen this happen to anyone in any FNaF fan game, to be honest. It was bizarre, but it was pretty dang funny. So, yeah, this game is pretty bad. It's not like there's anything to say when it comes to the presentation or the lore. It's just ripped off from FNaF 2 entirely, basically. Even the ideas that aren't directly ripping off FNaF 2, they're still not very original. Like, even in the death minigames this game has, like, the death minigames are just FNaF 2 minigames. Like, it's nothing. If anything, the history behind this game is more interesting than the game itself. And I just think that's funny. Okay, so we're off to a bit of a rocky start, but you know, it's fine, you know? Well, let's just take a look at the sequel. I got a lot more to say about this game anyways, both good and not so good. Okay, so positives right off the bat. Outside of a couple like posters or whatever, all the models and environments in this game are actually original. Tyler made them himself, which like, that just immediately makes this game better than the first one because it's not just ripping off everything. And sure, I mean, you know, the animatronic models that are created for the game, yeah, they're not the greatest, you know, they've been memed on a bit because of just how kind of silly they look, but also, I don't know, I don't really hate the models. I think they have a charm to them. I just think they're neat. They're not great, but they're kind of silly. I like them. I mean, you know, they could have looked worse anyways. Look at this old Kitty Fastcat model. I mean, come on now. Oh yeah, speaking of Kitty Fastcat, we actually got some original characters. You know, we got Doug and Kitty Fastcat. That's pretty cool. Also, it's kind of interesting how Kitty Fastcat was made by Tyler's ex-girlfriend. It definitely makes some things in the later games a little bit awkward. But okay. You know, being more original is cool and all. You know, not ripping off everything is definitely a step in the right direction. How about the gameplay? It's basically just FNaF 2, but with fewer mechanics somehow. All you have is your mask, flashlight, and cameras. You gotta wind up the music box, and there's also a generate power button. So it's basically just another music box. But this one keeps the building alive. So, it's different. Definitely. Outside of the puppet, whenever anyone shows up in the hallway, you gotta put on the mask. The only exceptions being Foxy, who you flash multiple times like in FNaF 2, and Doug. We'll talk about him in a sec. Oh yeah, and I guess Kitty Fastcat and Sugar kind of go into the vent to try and get you, but you also deal with them using the mask, so it doesn't really matter either way. It's a pretty simple game, which isn't inherently an issue. Sometimes you just can't go wrong with a simpler FNaF game. I mean, heck, the first FNaF game was pretty simple, all things considered, but like, I still really like that game. But, I don't know, I feel like in this case, there probably could have been a little bit more done to spice things up. But then again, if the other mechanics were like how Doug was handled, maybe it's for the best there weren't a lot of mechanics in this one. Okay, so like, Doug. His mechanic, on paper, doesn't sound all that bad. He's unaffected by the mask and requires the player to use this blue button at the top of the cameras to make noise and distract him. And you know, that's not a bad idea by any means. I think that's actually kind of like interesting, especially, you know, at the time, you know? That's cool. There's just, you know, there's just a minor issue with Doug. You know, it's nothing too crazy. It's just the fact that he murders your eardrums every time he moves to a different camera. What was that? What in the world was that noise? Hello? What is going on there? That's like really loud in my ears. Ow! You mother fricker. Do you mind? Sir? Okay. Right. Okay. Yep. Sure. See? It's not that bad, right? My ears still hurt. I'm gonna be honest, this was the biggest reason I actually didn't finish the game. I made it to night 5, but Doug's screaming just really started to get grating after, like, I don't know, the first 2 attempts. There's also just another very mild inconvenience. Sometimes the mask just doesn't work. Like, it wasn't really an issue at the beginning of the game, but like, I can't help but notice. During night 5 here, I had my mask on when Freddy showed up in my office, and he ended up just murdering me anyways. Because, having one of your main mechanics just not work sometimes is nothing that crazy, and it's totally fine. I mean, even if the mask can work, everyone's kill timers are just stupid. So there's a chance that even if you're quick about putting on the mask when you see someone, you're probably just gonna die anyways. Like, look at this clip here. Chica showed up in the hallway, I put the mask on as fast as I could when I saw Chica. Chica still killed me. Probably because Chica was in the hallway when I had the cameras up or something. It's still obnoxious. It feels luck-based, And just that kind of RNG in a FNaF game really isn't enjoyable. It's fine to have RNG when it comes to like pathfinding or whatever, having the animatronics go different directions is cool. But when it comes to like actually dealing with them, no. No thank you. The crucifixion of my ears doesn't help either. Like, I'm sure Night 5 is definitely possible and all that. I'm sure plenty of people have beaten it. I just didn't have the motivation to do so. So, yeah. I didn't end up finishing this game, which, oh well. I wasn't missing out on much anyways. It was just like a paycheck or two. Yeah, it's fine. I do think overall the game is definitely better than the first one, just due to the fact that it actually tries to be something different. It tries to be something a little more original. But it's still not a great game, even if I do think there's a charm to it. I just wish some of the mechanics and like kill timers and stuff were just toned down a bit. It got a little silly at the end, Anyways, I need to go find my ears, so yeah, let's move on to the next game. Return to Freddy's 3, a game considered by quite a few TRTF fans to be the best of the original series. Right off the bat, I mean, there's definitely an upgrade in terms of the presentation. The game definitely looks a lot like FNaF 3 with how green everything is, but it doesn't look bad by any means. And honestly, I actually kind of like how the animatronics look in this one. Compared to the other 2 games, it definitely feels more like an official FNaF game, Like, there's not really much I can say in terms of, like, issues I have with the presentation, honestly. Heck, there's even more of a story in this game. We got a group of people teaming up to open up a horror establishment. And the character you play as has to watch the place while the rest of the guys salvage animatronics for the establishment. Like, it's nothing groundbreaking, but, like, it adds a bit more to the game, other than just, hey, this place needs a night guard. Go make some money. And you know what? On paper, the gameplay isn't even that bad. There's a couple mechanics such as closing doors in the cameras to stop some of the characters from getting in your office, using this control panel's corrupt signal to get rid of any animatronics in the hallway. There's also a tracker for Lockjaw. Oh yeah, Lockjaw, the icon of the series, the person. It's properly introduced here and basically becomes the major antagonist for the series from here on out, both in lore and in game. And that's cool. It's cool to see the game starting to actually branch out a little bit and kind of become its own little thing. There's even special minigames like in FNaF 3 that not only help you get the good ending, since this is very FNaF 3 coded, there's going to be multiple endings, but it also kind of explains some of the TRTF lore. It's vague, but it's something. There's definitely a lot to this game, and from a content perspective, I could definitely agree with this being the best of the original 4 games. It definitely feels the most complete, if that makes sense, It kind of makes it all the more unfortunate that I kind of didn't really enjoy my time playing this game. Maybe it's a bit of a skill issue on my end, but like, I couldn't figure out how to properly deal with everyone. And at times it really felt like the game did not like me, and often just kind of got me into situations I just couldn't win. Like, take Lockjaw for example. His mechanic is, simple enough. He'll slowly make your way to your office, he'll start at camera 10, and then he'll take a scripted path going to camera 2. You gotta close the doors and the cameras to stop him from progressing, and if he manages to get into your office, he won't leave. Which is cool and all, but like, you know, look at me checking camera 2 here, like all night basically. Notice how I didn't see him once, and yet somehow he still managed to get inside my office? Relatively simple job, all things considered. Wait, what? Like, maybe it's a case of he takes an alternative path to get inside your office? But from what I could gather, that's not supposed to be the case. He should always just end up at camera 2 anyways, where you can just close the door on camera 2 and he'll leave. So I don't know what's up with that. And you know what? Okay, maybe that's a skill issue, but what about Vigo? This odd snake guy over here. He's simple enough. All you gotta do is just use the corrupt signal button on him, and he should just leave. But like, I swear I'm not going insane here. Even when I do use it and get rid of him, he still just kills me anyways. I don't get it. You know? Oh, and then there's the control panel itself, which, like, holy crap, this thing is a mess. It's not even a complicated system. Like, what can you do with this? Okay, you can look at Lockjaw's position in the cameras. You can also fix the light system, which is the game's ventilation system. And you can also fix the door lock system. And also, you know, cross signal or whatever. Like, it should be simple, but the way it's programmed is incredibly odd. Sometimes you need to wait for a system to reboot / corrupt the signal. Sometimes it just instantly does it. Sometimes when you click on a system to reboot, hovering your mouse over another option afterwards will reboot the other system. I don't even think it does that. Sometimes if a system automatically reboots and you click off the control panel, a reboot will still start and make you unable to open the control panel until the reboot finishes. Basically, this freaking thing's a mess. And it's weird, and it feels buggy as heck, and it didn't really help anything when dealing with everything else in the game. Like, it sounds like it wouldn't be a big issue. It got to a point where I just did not feel like continuing the game. I kind of gave up on night 4 of all things, because I couldn't figure it out, and I just didn't want to go. I didn't feel like finishing it. I would have gone back to the game after playing through TRTF 4. I just didn't want to. It's a little bit unfortunate, especially since I wanted to get a particularly special ending during my playthrough. Not the good ending, not the bad ending. I wanted to get the sad ending, where BFP, one of the major characters in the lore of the series, walks up to a laptop and then just dies. Absolute cinema! Oh yeah, there's also the Night 6 ending where the building gets shut down because Lockjaw ended up murdering 6 children by hugging them to death. Awesome sauce. So yeah, unfortunately my experience with this game wasn't the greatest, and it kind of tested my patience a good bit, especially after dealing with the first 2 games. I do agree that I think this is overall the best game in the original series, just due to how much content and stuff is in it. As well as just, you know, it just, again, like I said, it feels the most complete, you know? Having all this extra content, having like these bonus nights and just all these different things, like, it's definitely, like, the best of the series. I just didn't enjoy playing it, to be honest. Final game in the original TRTF series, and by extension the final game in the series as a whole, because everything that was planned afterward died in the water. Now, does it hold up when compared to everything else so far? I mean, it's fine, I suppose. I will say though, right out of the gate, this game was technically made in like 3 to 4 weeks. Like, sure, it was supposed to be released at a later point, at least according to like sources like the TRTF wiki and all that, but it was rushed out early due to like people leaking builds and stuff. I mean, considering that overall the game was actually pretty stable for the most part and didn't really have any crazy bugs, or at least crazy bugs you wouldn't likely encounter normally. Honestly, that's pretty impressive, I can't even lie. Like, game development ain't an easy thing, so the fact that a game like this was able to be developed and released in such a short amount of time despite everything, I'm like, I can't hate that. Like, that's actually pretty cool, all things considered, you know? But okay, you know, a game having a short development cycle, whatever. How's the game itself? Like, how does it actually play? Well, I mean, it's definitely a bit more simple compared to the last game, but it's not the worst thing ever. It's pretty much just 3 things you gotta do throughout each night. Make sure the power doesn't go out in the building, hide from most of the animatronics using this locker, and then also just smoke out Freddy or Lockjaw since the locker doesn't affect them. It's definitely more on the simple side mechanic-wise, but I don't know, everything seems to work pretty properly, so there's nothing to really complain about there. It's not like I have to deal with another control panel, you know? What I will complain about, however, is how the animatronics themselves act, because I have some issues with them, primarily with the characters that require you to hide in the locker. Okay, so the first issue here. Actually getting into the locker itself is annoying, since you basically have to be in the direct center of the office to be able to actually use it, which doesn't sound like the biggest issue in the world, but also it's a bit precise, and the animatronics that require the locker, they run past your office really fast. With like Sally the Panda, for example, and like she's not too bad. She'll usually appear behind your desk after running past your office. But then there's, what is her name, Collie and Bonnie. Like, if you're not already in the locker by the time they run past, you're probably gonna die, because you need to rush to get into that locker. And again, you gotta be really centered to be able to get into the locker in the first place. It's a little bit ridiculous. And you know, it's not like you can just hide in the locker the whole time. You gotta make sure the power stays up. Otherwise, you're just gonna die from the power outage. And sure, Freddy and Lockjaw are honestly pretty easy to deal with, though I know Freddy killed me one time, and in that instance, it didn't really feel fair, because bro, I was smoking you out already, get out of my office. They can cause a pretty funny double team with some of the locker animatronics and make it pretty much impossible to survive. Like, look at what happened here with Lockjaw and Bonnie. Granted, it was basically the only time that happened in my playthrough, at least to the point where it was near impossible to win, but still, it can still happen. And that's just obnoxious. Now, at least Kitty Fast gets pretty chill. If you keep hiding in the locker like I was, she'll just never pop into your office for more than like half a second. Unless she decides to be a creep and just watch you do whatever you're doing in that office. Sometimes she can break and her sprite will just stay in the office and stare at you. Probably judging you for like, I don't know, your search history or something. To be fair, at the end of the day, most of the time when you die, it is basically your fault. And while I definitely think the speed some of these animatronics go is ridiculous and not exactly fair, most of the time you can survive. I feel like these kinds of speeds should be something you would keep in a max mode, and not like something that can kill you in night 1 of all things. But at the end of the day, it's still a skill issue if you die to them 9 times out of 10. But like, I don't know, man, I didn't have the greatest time with this game either. Especially since with this game, like, when you aren't trying to avoid death, it's not very eventful, you know? You just kind of wait in the locker for a while until you need to go charge the power or smoke out someone. And assuming you don't get clapped because the game wanted you to get clapped, it's really not that exciting, which is definitely a bit of a shame. I do think in terms of the overall presentation of the game, while I still prefer TRTF3 a little bit more, I still think the atmosphere of whatnot in this game is pretty strong. And also, hey, the death minigames come back, and that's pretty cool. Even if I'm just kind of lost on the lore at this point, but there's the book. There's the book. And yeah, sure, it's definitely annoying to deal with the locker animatronics, but I guess to an extent, there is a level of tension that gets added to the experience. Even if it's less of a scared tension and more of a, dear God, you better not clap me again for the 5th time. I don't want to deal with you anymore, Bonnie. And to be also fair, I do think to an extent I kind of TRTF'd myself out a bit too much. I mean, I basically spent like 2 days in a row just thinking about and focusing on playing these games. And I think by the time I got to 4, I was just kind of ready to be done with the games, which made my frequent skill issues all the more obnoxious. Let me be clear, I still think a couple of the characters here are definitely an issue for a game like this, and the stuff should have been toned down a little bit, especially the speed. And at the end of the day, it still is a skill issue, you know? So even though I may have died the Bonnie at 5 AM, because I thought Bonnie was Freddy and went to pull the smoke lever, you know, it was still ultimately a skill issue. It didn't make that failing less painful though, and by that point I was basically done. It was at a point where I purposely tried to glitch the game so that Sally would freeze during her jump scare and make the rest of the night basically free. Although I didn't even manage to get that working, so I just wasn't winning one way or another. By that point I decided to just stop there and just work on everything else. Sure, I would have missed the awesome ending where Gron, important guy who was also in this secret TRTF3 minigame, it's fine. He slips on a bar of soap into a golden Lockjaw suit and dies. And there's also a nice 6th ending where Golden Lockjaw kills you, and then Tyler Alstrom himself leaves an entire vent message in his game while Welcome to the Machine by Pink Floyd plays. Yes, that's actually what happens. I'm not joking. It is definitely a choice. But, you know, at this point I got better things to do. Y'all can look up these things yourself or something. I don't freaking know, dude. And with that, we have come to the end of Volume 1 of the original TRTF series. And I gotta say, they certainly were games. As much as it was cool to look back on these games, especially when looking at how they compare to FNaF games nowadays, they were definitely FNaF fan games that were made in 2015, that's for sure. Although, despite the very questionable quality nowadays, I mean, I can't deny the fact that these games were big deals back when they were new. And they were pretty dang influential in the fan game scene as a whole. Like, yeah, these games may not be very good nowadays. You know, people have joked about these games for a while now. But, I don't know, I'm always going to respect these games for what they were able to do back in the early days of FNaF and the community. I'll probably just enjoy what these games were through YouTube videos though, because actually playing them left quite a bit to be desired. That being said, I'm aware of stuff like the anniversary editions of these games, as well as the many other remakes of the original series that aim to take the ideas these games had and make them into competent, actually enjoyable experiences. So, you know, perhaps that'll be something to look into at another point. And like I said, I'm more than willing to look at what could have been, as well as look at how some people actually try to recreate what could have been. There's a couple of TRTF 5 revivals out there, you know. There's even a Frank Burt related game, which is kind of interesting. This series has definitely been one to fascinate me, even if it is a pretty confusing, not very well put together mess. But like, I want to keep being fascinated, you know? Like, this game always has something to it that just... there's something here, you know? There's a lot of potential with a series like this. But, I don't know, if nothing else, I'm just going to end the review with this. Despite everything that the series contains, despite all the issues and whatever that arise from these games, I still question the decision to add super cancer to your FNaF lore. Like, why is that a thing that is said in The Dreadful Truth? It is so dumb that it circles back to being hilarious, and I'm gonna have a great time when I eventually get around to reading that whole thing.